you can't control when you land a Black Flash. With everything we've seen so far, that's completely true. Nobody can just force their cursed energy to flash black out of nowhere. It just doesn't really work that way. Even with Gojo's 6 Eyes and his limitless curse technique, you'd really think it's just down to luck. Or maybe not completely. Nobody lands Black Flashes by mistake. It's never a coincidence. It's Jujutsu Kaisen's own critical blow. It's a game changer even for special grades. Landing a Black Flash fundamentally isn't just luck. There's definitely ways to increase your chances. It is never guaranteed, but it's also not completely random. It's not like people just hit Black Flashes by accident. But even then, Gojo says it just comes down to nothing but luck. Even while playing by the rules, you can't just win a Black Flash. But if we look at moments that happen right before igniting the black sparks, there's one similarity. Each time before cursed energy begins to flash black, there's a certain aspect to every mindset of the sorcerer that's all too consistent. It's like they're giving into a certain state of mind that begins to create the most uncontrollable aspect of cursed energy. Today I'll be covering exactly what makes Black Flashes happen and why they might not be as random as you think with the correct mindset. Please make sure to leave a like on the video because it's really important to continue making content for you guys. Subscribe to the channel below if you're not already subscribed, and comment down below some video ideas that you want to see be done because I do look at those. Cursed energy flashes black when it's applied within a very short time frame. If you can connect your physical attacks with cursed energy within 1/1,000,000th of a second or 1 microsecond, you might potentially land yourself a Black Flash. Ever since chapter 48, that's really the only explanation we ever got for what exactly created the sparks of black. Even Gojo admits that this definition is a bit lackluster. It doesn't even really explain most of it. According to Gojo, it's not just about reinforcing your strikes with insane efficiency or even precision. If that was all it took to land a Black Flash, then Gojo would be able to land a Black Flash with every punch, but that's obviously not the case. Since Gojo's got the 6 Eyes, reinforcing his strikes even within that original time frame that we're given, which is 1/1,000,000th of a second or 1 microsecond, is definitely not a problem for Gojo. He flat out says himself that if that was the only requirement to land a Black Flash, then he'd be igniting the sparks of black at will. When Gojo was around and, not cut in half, he also held the record for the most Black Flashes. But Jaded, that's never been stated once. Why are you riding? Half Joe got exercised? So if we were to just count Shinjuku, Gojo lands a total of 4 Black Flashes. One of them on Sukuna, 2 of them on Mahoraga, and another Black Flash on Agito. Well then again, Nanami and Yuji have both held the record for the most consecutive Black Flashes. But even if Nanami has landed more Black Flashes back to back, Gojo has still hit more Black Flashes overall when it comes to Black Flashes that were landed individually and not consecutively. Nanami has never landed a Black Flash on screen. He did land a couple in the Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 0 movie, but in terms of just the manga, we've never actually seen him land a Black Flash. We know Nanami held the record for the most consecutive Black Flashes, so we'll assume that his total number, just to be safe, is only 4. Gojo flat out says that he's landed more Black Flashes than Nanami, so we'll assume that before Shinjuku, Gojo's total record of Black Flashes was sitting comfortably at 5. Against Hanami, Yuji lands a total of 5 Black Flashes. He lands another one against Eso and Kechizu on the bridge, and then another 2 against Mahito and Shibuya. So Yuji lands a total of 8, Nanami for sure lands a total of 4, but Gojo landed a total of 9 Black Flashes. I had to go back and add this part into the recording, but Yuji landed another Black Flash against Sukuna. This means that both Yuji and Gojo now have the record for the most total Black Flashes, which honestly kinda strengthens my argument later in the video, so just keep that in mind for now. The reason behind why Gojo could land so many Black Flashes is because out of every sorcerer, Gojo especially is really good at raising his chances. When he does reinforce his punches and loads them up with cursed energy, there's 3 different types. 1 is the type that will strengthen Gojo's fist, 2 is the type that will crash into his opponent, but 3 is the type that will manage to do both. Number 3 is the part that's responsible for creating a Black Flash. It's not just about strengthening your fist or crashing cursed energy into your opponent, it's doing both with extreme precision. Remember Yuji's Divergent Fist? That attack completely separates both the first and the second type of attack that Gojo's talking about. Divergent Fist was a phenomenon that only occurred because of cursed energy lag. Doing this completely by mistake, Yuji separated both the first and the second type of cursed energy. He can still obviously exercise curse spirits, so it's not like at any point when using Divergent Fist, Yuji is completely leaving behind his cursed energy. We get a diagram of what exactly is going on when Yuji activates Divergent Fist, and it clearly depicts both types of cursed energy that Gojo's talking about. The first strike that we see with Divergent Fist and the first strike that's depicted in the diagram is one of the types of cursed energy that Gojo mentions, the type that strengthens your fist. When Divergent Fist releases its secondary blow, that's also the second type of cursed energy that Gojo's talking about, the type that crashes into your opponent. There's a point way back during the Goodwill event where Yuji was cured of his Divergent Fist. Todo actually managed to teach Yuji how to properly flow cursed energy all throughout his body. The lag that was created from Yuji's terrible cursed energy control completely disappeared. By controlling both types of cursed energy and syncing them together, he created the third type of cursed energy that Gojo's talking about. After this happens, he goes on to land 5 Black Flashes against Hanami. Yuji even matched Nanami's world record for the most consecutive Black Flashes, making him the second person to hold that title. Synchronizing both types into manifesting the third isn't a small feat. Those who have landed a Black Flash would be instantly put in the 1% of sorcerers. Now let's say hypothetically, you mastered landing the third type of cursed energy with extreme proficiency. You can combine the loaded cursed energy in your fist with the kind that crashes into your opponent even within a microsecond. There would never be a point where you're landing Black Flashes with some 100% success rate. Having the greatest cursed energy efficiency of all time still would never guarantee you a Black Flash. Gojo himself is living proof. He's the only living person who can manifest the third type of cursed energy whenever he'd want, but he still says it's nothing but luck. It's just a toss-up depending on the blend. Within each situation, there's likely different factors that can raise your chances. You have to consider your environment. It's gonna be different for every Black Flash. You have to take into account way more than just your surroundings. Your current physical condition is one of those determining factors. Gojo doesn't get specific on what he means by that, but it's definitely important. Your opponent's cursed energy is also a determining factor for landing Black Flashes for some reason, and while it might make you laugh, Gojo says he thinks that room temperature has something to do with it. That last part I just mentioned is actually a key detail that you need to remember, but for later in the video. But just like Gojo says, there's no correct way to unleash a Black Flash, and he's also completely correct. It doesn't really come with its own textbook answer. However, there is one aspect that seems to be consistent to nearly every Black Flash we've seen. Black Flashes, they never happen by accident. Everyone who has landed a Black Flash probably knew that they were going to land a Black Flash even before they landed the strike. When Yuji was about to land his most recent Black Flash on Sukuna, the narrator flat out comments that Mahito had felt an incoming Black Flash way back in Shibuya, clearly have their own oncoming premonition. It's also implied by Gojo that you can actually try to land a Black Flash. He explains what happens when he says he's really going for it. We see the same thing during Yuji's Black Flash on Hanami. Yuji clearly has to try to land a Black Flash. When landing a Black Flash, you actually have to try to go for it. One determining factor in landing Black Flashes that Gojo doesn't mention is determination itself. Cursed energy nearly never flashes black when the moment isn't right. During the Goodwill event, Yuji lands his first Black Flash after being so focused he literally begins drooling. When Wind King was about to reach Nobara, when the narrator said he must be defeated that instant, Yuji landed another Black Flash. Nobara, who also landed a Black Flash right here, was focused so intensely she didn't even realize that Esso's poison was still running through her body. The pain only sharpened her focus before igniting a Black Flash. In Shibuya, Mahito landed his Black Flash after realizing himself as a true curse. He found his own talent to be extremely exhilarating. When Yuji gets back up, he Black Flashes after remembering Nanami's final words and deciding against using his sins as an excuse to run away. Todo landed his Black Flash after seeing his brother left behind by the one who couldn't touch the sparks of black. Sukuna's Black Flash happened against Maki. He was given a role by someone other than himself. It's the first time he says he ever needed to prove himself. Yuji's final blow against Mahito, Gojo's first Black Flash against Sukuna, every single Black Flash all seems to be consistent with one idea. Determination can definitely raise your chances of landing a Black Flash. It's not being determined to save everyone, but rather determined to win. Yuji's first Black Flash in Goodwill didn't even happen immediately. It definitely wasn't his first attempt. He goes in for a wide open shot on Hanami, but completely misses. He gets caught up in thinking about Megumi and Junpei and misses the opportunity completely. Todo explains to Yuji how even those weaker and inferior can be provoked into putting their opponent on their back foot when their power is being fueled by anger. But the opposite is just as bad. Todo says that mishandling cursed energy because you're too angry to focus is just a waste of skill. Yuji needs to suppress his anger and rage for Megumi's pain and focus on the goal. That's when Yuji's concentration became so sharp, even Hanami can sense how incredible it must be. Again, Gojo's not wrong. There's definitely different factors for landing a Black Flash that change with every situation. However, the luck aspect he's mentioning isn't really as random or unlikely as it sounds. When characters begin to engage with their determination while also fulfilling the other fundamental parts in creating a Black Flash, it can raise their chances dramatically. All throughout Jujutsu Kaisen, there's been moments where characters giving into certain mindsets can determine their future as sorcerers. There are certain moments that are created from your own ability to control your focus that leads to victory. I've already explained how determination is one key aspect to landing Black Flashes, but it doesn't end there. It's not just being determined to save others as much as it is being determined to win. In the Jujutsu Kaisen fanbook, Gege Akutami, the mangaka and author of the series, explains why Megumi never landed his first Black Flash. It's explained that Yuji, after the Goodwill event, ended up pulling ahead of the trio between him, Megumi, and Nobara. At first, he thought to give the rest of the group the same power-up, but decided against it for Megumi. It didn't suit him, Gege said, but it's not like Megumi wasn't a close-range fighter. He definitely had his fair share of opportunities to land a Black Flash. Nobara had landed a Black Flash too, and Megumi fought in close quarters combat way more often than she did. Not to mention, it's not like Nobara landed her Black Flash with a punch or a kick. All she did was activate her curse technique while also using a curse tool. Megumi was also just keeping up with Maki Zenin when they both double-teamed Haname. You can argue that because Megumi's a Shikigami user, he's not suited for hand-to-hand combat, and that's why he's not suited for Black Flash. However, he's a Shikigami user that's more than capable and even gets into hand-to-hand combat more often than you think. It's hard to argue that it's Megumi's combat style that made him not suited for Black Flash when we have people like Nobara who are hitting Black Flashes with cursed tools. The bigger problem with Megumi landing a Black Flash is more likely his mindset. During this time, Megumi definitely did not have the mentality to be landing a Black Flash. One key difference between Megumi and Yuji was their mindsets. It held Megumi back for a very long time until this moment. Megumi had gone to Gojo for some extra training after feeling left behind by Yuji before his fight with the Finger Bear and after the Goodwill event. But Megumi already had the wrong idea. Gojo makes it clear that both his potential and skill are higher than Yuji, and it's just the mental aspect that separates them both. Megumi just doesn't know how to bring out his best self. During the baseball game, Gojo notices something about Megumi's strategy that reflects something much deeper. He decides to go for a sacrifice bunt to make sure that Nobara could advance. It's not really a bad strategy for baseball, but it would never be smart to act on that mindset when trying to become a strong sorcerer. Baseball is a team sport and everyone's expected to play their own role. It's the complete opposite to being a sorcerer. When you're a Jujutsu sorcerer, you're playing an individual sport. Being a Jujutsu sorcerer isn't a team sport. It's an individual sport, unlike baseball. Yuji and Gojo will always be swinging for the fences till the very last second. They'd never choose to sacrifice themselves so somebody else could save the day instead of them. Both Yuji and Gojo believe in their own ability to win, even if it's selfish. However, current Megumi doesn't think like that at all. Satoru Gojo has an even higher Black Flash count than Nanami. Yuji Itadori just landed 5 Black Flashes in Goodwill, which is the entire reason why Megumi's even having this lecture in the first place. Both Yuji and Gojo also hold the record for landing the most Black Flashes in history. You could consider Yuji and Gojo the 1% of people who are already in the 1%. They're anomalies, even considering other people who have also landed Black Flashes. It's nearly completely unheard of to be this proficient with cursed energy manipulation in general, but Yuji and Gojo make what's already unbelievable even more unrealistic. It's important to outline and spotlight this clear similarity between two of the greatest to ever touch the sparks of black. Megumi has been underestimating himself and others around him instead of envisioning a version of himself in the near future that's already surpassed his current limitations. If Megumi doesn't change the very nature of how he thinks, he won't match up to Gojo or even Nanami, who's another Black Flash specialist for holding the record for the most consecutive Black Flashes. Both Gojo and Yuji understand that there's a pretty big difference in winning by dying and winning even if you die, but Megumi didn't seem to understand that these are two completely different things. Gojo says to Megumi that it's okay to be selfish. Weak sorcerers don't have their own sense of self. Megumi is directly set aside from Gojo and Yuji for not adapting this mindset, and it's why he was never suited for landing a Black Flash. When Megumi does apply himself momentarily and changes the way he thinks to get a better understanding of what Gojo's talking about, he finally expands his domain. Megumi gained the determination and sense of self that Gojo was trying to ingrain, but again, he's not as adapted as Gojo or Yuji whatsoever. Megumi still goes on to sacrifice his own life in Shibuya, and he's going against the advice that he'd just been given. Megumi obviously did grow a bit. The times that he does choose to sacrifice himself and summon Maharaga are much more understandable compared to before. Before Megumi got that lecture from Gojo, he nearly summoned Maharaga on Todo, so I think it's safe to say that he's come a long way. Megumi also does try to envision a stronger version of himself to overcome the challenge in front of him against Toji, which is just like the advice that Gojo gave him, so in the long term, Megumi definitely did develop a little bit from that conversation. But the main difference still between Megumi, Yuji, and Gojo is that Gojo and Yuji, they're always swinging for the fences. There's never a point where they'd ever give up and summon Maharaga, unlike Megumi. When it came down to Gojo having to use an unlimited purple or his 0.2 second domain expansion, he chooses to risk it all in the name of victory. When Yuji only had one option to take down Mahito, he chose to bet on the Black Flash. Even when they're backed into a corner, they don't ever choose to sacrifice themselves like Megumi. But that's also exactly why he's not suited to be landing a Black Flash. When Mahito had landed his first Black Flash, it's after he realized himself as a true curse. It's his own sense of self manifesting, and it's similar to what Gojo mentions. Mahito had also became the type to swing for the fences till the very last second, just like like Yuji. Despite Sukuna being a lingering threat, he chooses to take the gamble and expand his domain for 0.2 seconds, just like Gojo, who he says he learned it from in the first place. Giving into that selfish mindset, it's what manifested the determination to be landing black flashes, and it's a constant theme. When successfully landing a black flash, sorcerers enter a zone-like state similar to what athletes experience. You're basically just extremely locked in. Manipulating cursed energy becomes as easy as breathing. Yuji, Mahito, and Todo all reached 120% of their potential by landing black flashes. All three of them, they all entered the zone. Mahito says after landing his black flash, he can now finally feel the true essence of his own soul. When he landed his next black flash, Mahito literally reached his true form. If reaching his true form isn't the clearest representation of self-affirmation, with his overwhelming sense of self clearly shining, I don't really know what is. Nobara says that feeling those sparks is feeling the core of cursed energy itself. That's also the same thing that Gojo mentions before claiming that he alone is the honored one. It's a comment that Gege himself mentions that Gojo makes that really reflects his arrogance. Black flashing has always had some connection with determination in reaching your true sense of self. During Yuji's final round against Mahito, the narrator comments about how black flashes are still uncontrollable, but Yuji is so amazing that he'll make you think that he's doing it at will. When he's forced to bet on himself and his own ability to win, with his only option being to land a black flash, Yuji bets on himself and touches the sparks of black. When he fought against Maki Zenin, Sukuna had felt for the first time that another role had been forced upon himself without his own consent. When he needed to prove himself and his jujutsu against one of the strongest physical-based fighters in history, he landed another black flash. Sukuna decided to bet on his own punches against the strongest pound-for-pound fighter in the series. Against the strongest physical merchant in the series, Sukuna chose to bet on the strongest possible physical attack in his arsenal. The determination spawns from betting on yourself, and that's partially what ignites black flashes. It's why black flashes don't just randomly happen. However, this determination that comes with landing black flashes only really applies to the first black flash usually when we see characters land them. The following black flashes don't really have their own black flash moment per se, and there's times where determination really isn't all too present. There's times where black flashes can seem a bit random compared to the first black flash that we see a character hit, but that could just be chalked up to being in the zone and having an easier time manipulating that cursed energy to land a black flash. This idea of betting on yourself is pretty similar to Kinji Hikari's fever. Hikari surrounds his life around the idea that life itself is a gamble. Hikari says that everybody gambles, but what they hate is losing and going to ruin. Hikari believes that gambling is just another part of life and everybody is hungry to win something big. Hikari gives the example of a scammer trying to scam an innocent person to buying information that will make them rich. He says that both the scammer and the person getting scammed both chase the same idea, and it's what motivates them to live their lives the way they do and make the decisions they choose to make. Both the scammer and the person getting scammed, they want to take the gamble by making an opportunity for themselves to change their lives forever. That's what Hikari calls the fever. Everybody can feel it. It's a rush of exhilaration that comes from the determination to create change that drives people to make these crazy decisions. Gambling has always been a more direct way for dealing with the fever according to Hikari, but it's risky. People just get simply carried away and they end up making rash decisions when chasing their fever, but without the fever, people can't even fall in love. Both the fever and the determination to land black flashes, they sound more closely linked than you'd think. Going for a nearly uncontrollable gamble to change the battle and essentially your own life within seconds, that's a black flash. Being determined to succeed by swinging for the fences till the very last second, by envisioning a stronger version of yourself, is exactly when Yuji and Gojo perform their best and likely creates black flashes. Megumi, who was never suited for a black flash according to the author himself, didn't have this trait like Itadori. He rarely took the risk to change his own life forever and instead decided to throw it away. Megumi wasn't as worthy as Yuji to be landing a black flash. The topic of Gojo's conversation with Megumi directly comes from Yuji's own growth by landing those black flashes against Hanami. Gege himself says in the fanbook that it's the part that just pulled him ahead of the rest of the trio. Megumi goes to Gojo to find the difference between him and Yuji. He doesn't understand why Yuji can do some things that he just can't do. Megumi wants to understand why he's being left behind, and Gojo explains exactly what separates Megumi from Yuji, the one who can touch the sparks of black. Nearly everything that Gojo's mentioning is likely in direct correlation to those black flashes, since that's what sparked Yuji's growth in the first place and pressured Megumi to ask Gojo for some extra training. It's not just advice to grow as a sorcerer, but also partially explaining what it takes to become someone who lands a black flash. Yuji, Gojo, and Nanami are all outlined as people in this conversation who Megumi can never reach if he never changes the way he thinks. It's not a coincidence that all of these people mentioned in this conversation are all record holders and some of the most important and greatest people to ever land the black flash. Up until recently, Gojo had the record for the most black flashes ever landed, and Nanami and Yuji both had the record for the most black flashes flashes landed back to back. There's only one other person mentioned during this conversation, and it's Nobara, who's the one to advance in Megami's place during the baseball game to be the player who wins for Megami, and coincidentally, a person who has landed her own Black Flash. Gojo, Nanami, Yuji, and even Nobara, they all represent places that Megami doesn't seem willing to follow, and they've all also landed their own Black Flashes, which makes everything I'm saying even more consistent. Gojo makes it clear that it's okay to be selfish. Being a sorcerer, it's an individual sport. When landing Black Flashes, Nanami says it feels like the world is finally revolving around you. Landing Black Flashes puts the sorcerer in their own individual sport. Hakari's fever is chasing the desire to change your own life forever, not the lives of others. Playing by the fever is also an individual sport. It's just as selfish. Gojo mentions that while he finds it funny, he thinks that room temperature actually has something to do with landing a Black Flash. It's a small comment, but with everything I've just mentioned, it makes this interpretation even more consistent. Gojo might not be feeling the actual room temperature, but rather the heat of the moment from chasing the fever. It's that determination that's created with landing every Black Flash. You definitely need to have proper cursed energy control, and there's way more factors than just one, and while luck might be important, never forget about the mindset that's clearly required to land a Black Flash.